Good evening. Oops, I'm shorter than that. While Ms. Locks, or President Locks, is caught in traffic, I will start this evening. Would the secretary please call the roll?
Mrs. Becker.
Here.
Mr. Carangelo.
Here.
Mrs. Chu.
Here.
Mr. Sismar.
Here.
Ms. Guas.
Here.
Mr. Hong.
Here.
Mrs. Reese.
Here.
Mr. Winston.
Here.
And President Lax. Okay.
Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hi, good evening. The New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed and acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the East Brunswick Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted at the Board of Education offices located at 760 Route 18. Written notice was also provided to the Sentinel, the Newark Star Ledger, the Home News and Tribune, and the Municipal Clerk of East Brunswick. Sorry. All Board of Education meetings, with the exception of executive session discussions, are videotaped for later broadcast. It is the policy of the Board of Education that videotaped meetings are not edited for any purpose. Individuals who speak at the board public meetings should be aware of these videotaping rules. Welcome. We're going to start this evening with the spring 2022 statewide assessment results from Dr. Boley.
Thank you. Good evening. Okay, so this evening I'm going to present the results of the testing that our students participated in last school year. As you know, our students were assessed various times last school year, 3 times. In the fall, our students participated in the Start Strong assessment. In March, our 11th grade students were administered a new graduation test called the New Jersey Graduation Proficiency Assessment. And after 2 years of cancellation due to the pandemic, the NJSLA was also administered to our students in the spring last year. As we continuously work to understand and support the impact the pandemic has had on student learning, we are reminded that our students have had 2 years of interrupted instruction. We are reminded that assessments were not administered for 2 years, and last year was the first time students in grades 3 through 5 had ever taken a standardized assessment, and the first time in 3 years that our older students have been assessed. In addition, although our overall enrollment numbers haven't changed significantly, last school year we welcomed 585 new students to the district. And you can see in the chart at the bottom of the slide, the column to the left reflects the overall student population 2 years ago. The column on the right shows our 585 new students who enroll from districts outside of East Brunswick, other states, and many from other countries. We can see, for example, that 2 years ago, our total ESL population was 1.8% of the total student population, and the cohort of new students we welcomed last year, 8.7% are eligible for ESL services. East Brunswick is a wonderfully diverse and talented district, and we must continue to provide targeted and differentiated support to help meet the needs of all of our students. The GPA. In March, the New Jersey Graduation Proficiency Assessment was introduced and administered to 11th grade students. The GPA is based on Algebra 1 geometry and 10th grade ELA standards. It's important to note that the 22 GPA administration is now considered a field test and will not be a pathway for graduation requirement. The test has not been standardized, and the DOE will use the information from this field test to improve future administrations of the GPA. The GPA has two performance levels indicating if a student is graduation ready or not yet graduation ready. And this test was administered to last year's 11th graders who are our seniors, and this was the first time they were assessing in a standardized way since they were in 8th grade. So statewide, 39% of the students in the state of New Jersey, according to this assessment, are deemed graduation ready last year when they were 11th graders. It's important to note, again, that once the DOE got these results back, the decision was made to make this assessment a field test. It's also important to note that all graduation requirements for the class of 2023 have been waived completely. So in East Brunswick, our overall proficiency was 23 percentage points above the state average. And then if you take a look at the lighter green, you can see that New Jersey Department of Education allows students to use more than one pathway to achieve their graduation assessment requirements. And in the lighter green, you can see that last year as 11th graders, 87% of our students, the class of 2023, had already met their graduation requirements through an alternate exam, such as the SAT, the PSAT, or the SLA, prior to taking this test. So although the state is saying that 62% of our 11th graders last year were graduation ready, they had met an alternate graduation proficiency exam deemed eligible by the same DOE. The subgroup performance shows that some student groups will need greater focus and support, the 10% gap in achievement between males and females, as well as the additional support needed by students with disabilities, students who are economically disadvantaged, and the disparity of student achievement across racial and ethnic groups. We anticipate that our students will continue to make gains in their achievement as pandemic learning interruptions are addressed through our multi-tier approach to support. In math, the results were higher. Students were tested on Algebra 1 and geometry standards, and 74% of our students achieved graduation-ready status over the 50% at the state level. As you can see again in the green, 86% of the same students, the class of 2023, had already met their graduation requirement through an alternate exam prior to being tested on the GPA. Math performance by genders was exactly the same, and most subgroups performed above the state average. Bless you. However, additional support continues to be needed to address lower performing subgroups. Again, this test is still in the design process by the New Jersey Department of Education. The SLA. In the spring, our students took the New Jersey Student Learning Assessment. Grades 3 through 9 took the ELA. Grades 3 through 8 took the math. And grades 7 through 12, students enrolled in Algebra 1, Geometry, or Algebra 2 took the test for the course that they were registered in. The SLA provides a scaled score of 650 through 850, which correlates to proficiency levels of 1 through 5. The score ranges that equate to each performance level are different for each exam. However, the DOE has determined that students must score at least a 4 to be considered proficient. However, for Geometry and Algebra 2 exams, students may also score a 3 to be considered proficient for the purposes of meeting graduation requirements. Beginning with English, the overall district proficiency is 67%, which is significantly higher than the state average, but lower by 7 points to pre-pandemic SLA results. The proficiency for each grade level is shown here in this chart, and at the bottom you can see a year-to-year comparison. There's a 16% point difference between the lowest performing grade level and the highest, with third grade achieving 60% and seventh grade reaching the proficiency of 76%. Looking at the subgroup data, the proficiency of female students is 11 points over male students. Our current ESL students also disproportionately struggled with the ELA exam. The discrepancy is less dramatic between other subgroups, but remain an area of focus as we continue to try and mitigate pandemic-related learning interruption. Moving on to math. We achieved an overall proficiency of 57%, which is 15 points higher than the state average. Our 2022 proficiency is 8 points lower than the last pre-pandemic administration. While the overall proficiency is lower, students performed well in grades 3 and 4, as well as geometry overall. And it's important to note that Algebra 2 is no longer a mandated test, so the only students who took Algebra 2 were those who had not previously met a graduation assessment requirement some other way, such as the SAT, PSAT, AccuPlacer. This is the same data broken down by school. We can see English Language Arts proficiency is consistently higher at Hammersholt and Churchill with 72% and 68% respectively. For math, the school proficiency was further broken down by test to illustrate the wide differences in proficiency. At Hammersholt, students taking Algebra 1 obtained 100% proficiency. Students taking Algebra 2 at Churchill also achieve 100% proficiency. Again, at East Brunswick High School, students were only required to participate in the Algebra 2 or geometry assessment if they had not already met their graduation requirement through an alternate exam. This resulted in a very low number of students required to test, 45 students in geometry and 146 students in Algebra 2. The resulting proficiency does not include 90% of the East Brunswick High School students who should not be considered representative of the school as a whole. The math subgroup performance. Males are performing higher than females by 6 points. Additionally, students with disabilities, our ESL students, and students in the economically disadvantaged subgroup struggled more in math than in ELA. We anticipate that our new math program and vision will help our teachers provide targeted support for students who struggle with math skills in elementary and upper elementary school. For students who qualify for basic skills instruction, our math specialists work one-on-one with students to help them achieve proficiency. And our instructional coaches are also integral to student success. They help teachers find appropriate strategies to support their students. Also, the secondary math department is really focusing on differentiating instruction to meet individual needs of students during the extended block period. Here we have our elementary schools, ELA and math proficiency, broken down by school. Our mission to meet the needs of all learners is to provide targeted and differentiated support to help bridge the gap between our lowest and highest performing schools. As we continue to look closely at each school and the different programs and student populations they serve, we are taking a deep dive into the school data to identify trends and to provide support as needed. For example, our instructional coaches are no longer assigned to a specific school, which allows for additional support to be leveraged where it is most needed. As you recall, last fall, our students in grades 4 through 10 participated in the Start Strong assessment. The NJ Start Strong tests test the students on the prior year content, and they're intended to give districts an indication of the support needed for students at the beginning of the school year. The results were shared with you in January and showed that students were grouped into one of the 3 support levels, as you can see on the slide. Level 1 indicates strong support may be needed. Level 2 is some support may be needed. And level 3 is less support may be needed. Although Start Strong and SLA are scored differently and are not directly comparable, Evidence of growth can be determined by looking at students who tested in the Start Strong Level 1 category, strong support may be needed, and then looking at their spring SLA results. So in other words, we looked at how they performed in the fall coming back from the pandemic and how they performed in the spring on the SLA. So again, these are all of the students who indicated that strong support was needed in the fall. And here's their ELA performance on the SLA in the spring. The top bar starts with grade 4 and it goes down. So you can see in the yellow, these students are approaching grade level expectations. The green is they met the expectations, and the blue is they're exceeding grade level expectations. So these results show that students made significant gains in their academic performance in both ELA and in math. The students identified as needing strong support showed significant growth in the spring administration in all grade levels, and these results indicate that our students who need support are being identified early and making real progress toward meeting grade level expectations. And here we see our results for math. In the math, the gains were quite significant, particularly in Algebra 1 and in the elementary grades. It should be noted that since Start Strong measures prior year content, students who started the 2021-2022 school year significantly behind had to master prior year content as well as meet their current grade level standards in order to demonstrate proficiency on the SLA. The New Jersey Student Learning Assessment for Science is administered in grades 5, 8, and 11. The NJSLA for Science is still a new exam. Last year was only the second administration of the exam. Our science department chair, Ms. Dee Benedetti, is on the state committee for this exam. The committee is reminding districts that since this is a new test and still in the design process by the DOE, we will require an adjustment period. This test is scored differently than the SLA for ELA and math. Students are scored on a scale of 1 through 4 with proficiency met at 3. The science results for East Brunswick were 18 points higher than the state. East Brunswick's overall proficiency of 42% is similar to the proficiency score achieved during the first administration of this exam in 2019, pre-pandemic. The assessment questions are dramatically different than in the past. The test questions are scenario-based and phenomenon-based. Every question has a content piece and a skill piece. And we know that labs are foundational to understanding the content, and that some skills suffered due to school closure and hybrid learning because we couldn't do the same labs and use the skills we were learning in hands-on activities in our classrooms. Again, this test is still in the design phase by the Department of Education. Dynamic learning maps, the DLM alternate assessment. The DLM assessment is administered to students with significant disabilities who qualify for the alternate assessment in accordance with the student's IEP. The DLM is administered to students in grades 3 through 8 and 11, and also in grades 5, 8, and 11 in science. 56 students participated in the ELA and math exam this year. 21 students participated in the science exam. The special education department worked diligently during the pandemic to maintain a high level of support for students with disabilities. These students were invited to come into school in person 5 days a week during COVID school closures, and we have provided ongoing training for our teachers who administer the DLM. And therefore, the proficiencies achieved by these students on the DLM are higher than pre-pandemic levels. As you can see from this year-to-year comparison, student scores increased in ELA and in math. Access for ELS. This is a state-mandated assessment administered to students in grades K through 12 who qualify for ESL instruction. Students receive scores in listening, speaking, reading, and writing, as well as an overall score. The proficiency levels are entering, emerging, developing, expanding, bridging, and reaching. Students are considered proficient when they have achieved an overall score of 4.5. Students who achieve proficiency are exited from the ESL program. This heat map displays the results of the 2022 Spring Access for ELS, showing the majority of our ESL students are in elementary grades and clustered in the developing and expanding categories. 275 participated in the Spring Access exam, and our ESL population has increased in the current year to over 300 students. There is also a significant number of kindergarten students in the entering category, owing to a larger influx of kindergarten students who qualify for ESL support when they start school. Once a student reaches the 4.5, they are exited from the program. And this is the same chart, but here are some key insights about our English language learners and the ESL program. Approximately 25% of students reached overall proficiency through Access and will no longer require ESL services. This percentage is comparable to prior years. The Access test was canceled in 1920. Our students, of students in levels 1 through 4, as you can see here, 74% are in the developing or expanding proficiency range, and 64% of ESL students are in our grades K through 4. Nearly all students who begin ESL instruction in elementary school will exit ESL prior to high school. As we continue to work to identify and support our students' academic needs, we are providing many avenues of academic support, such as basic skills support, after-school tutoring, sheltered instruction workshops, and push-in support. In conclusion, I'd like to thank the board and Dr. Valesky for your unwavering support as we work to ensure that each child reaches his or her full potential. And as always, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have now or at any time.
Questions?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mrs. Becker.
Thank you.
And then Mr.
Thank you
Winston.
very much, Joyce. That was a tremendous amount of information. First of all, I'm assuming the 25% of students who no longer require ESL services is good.
Yes.
Correct, okay. That's a positive.
And just so you're aware, we do track and monitor and support them for 2 years prior to their exit of the program.
Okay, thank you. I'm just curious, and you may not have the answer to this, and that's fine, and you can let us know at another date. This is going back to one of your first slides. It said an infrastructure trial and practice tests were delivered to students in grades 3 to 9 to help students prepare for the state assessment. I'm just curious, do you know offhand, or do you need to get back to us, how long was spent on the infrastructure trial and practice tests to help them prepare for taking a test?
I don't have that information, but we did want to be sure that all the students
No.
logging in, the
I
system
am
wouldn't
not,
go down and so forth.
this
Yeah.
is not a criticism. I have my own feelings about state assessments, which I'm not going to go into right now. But I'm just curious if it was hours, weeks, days.
No,
I'm
one
just
day.
curious if you could let me know. And again, it is
Certainly.
not a criticism of anything this district did. I can address how I feel about it once I learn how long the students had to spend learning how to take the state assessment. And my only other question is, with the dynamic learning maps, alternative assessments for students with disabilities, the phrase "who qualify for the alternative assessment in accordance with the student's IEP." So in terms of the word qualify, do we use some kind of a matrix? Or I'm just trying to think in terms of, is it that maybe a child's specific disability would be a learning disability to the degree that they couldn't take the test under any circumstances?
That's
that kind of
correct.
thing?
Yes.
Okay.
And that decision is made by the IEP team, who carefully weighs all options before they
Great.
would put a student.
Glad to hear
into this.
that. Thank you so much, and just, I don't need to know to the minute, just if you could just, next meeting even, just give me a broad idea. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mrs. Becker, so you're asking specifically how much time was spent on the infrastructure
The-
preparation?
How long they had to spend learning
Okay.
how to take
Okay.
the test? I'm just curious.
I can, I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry, I can't hear you.
sorry.
Did you want to, because I was going to go to Jeff and then I think Susanna. Do you have
I was-
comments or you want to?
Just a comment to Mrs. Becker, but I can wait.
Okay, I'm going to go to Jeff then.
Would it add color to that answer? Was that, I think you might, can I just?
Do you want?
Absolutely.
Is it okay? Yeah,
Thank
okay.
you. It's been my experience, not in East Brunswick, but it's been my experience that the script for the infrastructure trial isn't based on teaching the students how to do anything more than navigate through a computerized test. It's to use, I'm going to say, it talks about like how to use the tools and become comfortable with it.
No, again, I'm not criticizing that we tried to prepare our students for something. I have an issue for what they were being prepared for, but I'm just curious how much time was spent on learning how to take a statewide test that could have been spent, I don't know,
Teaching?
working to develop skills, remedial skills, perhaps going over things that the children are still lagging behind because of the pandemic, things that would have furthered their educational growth. That's all. I'm just vaguely curious, Dr. Valesky, and it has nothing to do with East Brunswick.
I don't want to interrupt the flow of conversation here, but I certainly concur that we are over-assessing through a state continuum. And the concern is the field testing that we're doing, you can tell these instruments are not valid because they're not field tested. And yet, here we are, back in school. We have staff back in classrooms, administrators, and a variety of people, boards meeting in person, and yet the Department of Education still continues to work remotely. I'm just going to say that.
Thank you. Mr. Winston, I just can't tell if you're laughing at me or with me.
I'm not laughing at you, believe me. I hear every word you said.
Thank you.
So I appreciate it. Is my turn?
Yes.
Just four easy ones. I think this data, by the way, I think is a great report, and I appreciate the data that's in here. I'm much more interested in what our administrators then get from this data, which would really start to help me understand what your interpretation is, less mine or anybody else's. So I just want to approach it in four easy areas. What is your biggest takeaway that when you went through this data, what keeps you up? at
The
night?
performance of our subgroups and the disparity in achievement. And we are digging into that data to try to get a whole picture. Some
Okay.
students are cross-represented in multiple subgroup areas, but to make sure that we are supporting them as best as we can.
Okay, and I would imagine there will be plans being brought back to this board to address those specific areas. And I appreciate that. And then, and you did address the second question in terms of closing the gap. On the page that was elementary schools grade 3 through 5 with the elementary schools, it appears that there is an outlier in Chittick in terms of performance and proficiencies. Why?
Different schools have different programming in them. Different programs are housed in different buildings, and we're taking a look at that and the
Okay.
achievement of those groups in those programs. and how
So
that
it'd be fair to say we've
impacts the whole
identified-
school.
You've identified the opportunity
Correct.
based on the results from this data.
That's
Is that
right.
fair?
And Mr. Winston, if I could, one of the other things that we're looking at is, and it's by school, but during the pandemic, when children were home, when students were learning from home, different schools, different families had different requirements during the pandemic. Some families were already set up for remote instruction because parents had already worked from home. That was part of the way they operated. And some of our families, parents had to return to work right away because they might have been in service fields. So some students navigated the pandemic and they're learning more independently, and some had parent resources at home. That's been a factor too in what we've seen across the board with
Good.
our schools.
That's perfect, because that leads to my last point, and this is a really important question. So we've learned a lot in the last 3 years. We've learned how to teach remotely. We've learned some of the divots and pitfalls that would come in. What are we doing now to better our preparedness in the event that we return to what once was the nightmare of lockdown? How will we teach differently? How will we deliver information differently? And what, I would imagine, I would hope, that there is a plan in place that is being formulated now to better prepare for this situation that nobody had foreseen coming last time around.
I would respond to that by saying that our teachers are better equipped than ever before to differentiate and understand individual student needs. And if the time comes where we would need, as evidenced in the growth from the fall, Start Strong, to the spring SLA, tremendous growth in those areas. So I would feel comfortable in saying that our teachers would be able to pivot to remote instruction, if that's your question, and understand their student needs better than ever before, and address any skill gaps with their students to a higher degree of confidence than we have ever been able to do in the past.
And that is the hope, but I was really looking for, I was hoping you were going to say, we are working on bettering the plan and transition. I didn't-
Transition to remote
If need
instruction?
be, if we find ourselves in that scenario again, I don't really just want to rest on the laurels of, we did it before, we'll do it better next time. I think there needs to be more planning around that. That is my opinion, but I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think Susanna, then Mark, and then Heather.
Yeah, one question similar to the question about Chittick and you know, what you observed there, but I would be really surprised if it was like driven by programming versus demographics. So that was just, I was wondering if you looked at the demographics and if that was driving it, because there were significant disparities based on demographics.
Yes.
And so.
Yes, that is the second layer, absolutely.
Yeah, because to think that one school has deficient programming would really be concerning, so that's, okay.
I don't think that's what.
That's not what you said.
Susanna, maybe you could clarify that.
What you meant by,
There's different populations, there's different programs at different schools.
There were some special education
okay,
programs in the building,
yes, then that has to do with the demographics of.
and also the student population as a whole. Yes, we're
Okay, that's, thank you for
diving
that
deep into all
clarification.
of the subgroups in
Thank
all
you.
of the schools.
Okay. So the other thing that was interesting is just kind of the, as much as everyone hates testing and, testing takes away from the day, but there is, this kind of puts in numbers what we all knew is the impact of, being out of the classroom for a couple of years, and we're seeing it in numbers here. So I was curious if our degradation is similar to what's seen statewide, or?
Well, as you see in this report, the state achievement levels, we won't have access to other districts until we all submit our school performance reports, which are due in a few weeks, and then the state will analyze all that data and put that out publicly.
Yeah, okay, so, I think some districts, they were maybe not as prepared because we had the technology, we had, technology and systems in place to allow us to get there. I know some schools where we talked to kids that, not East Brunswick, that, didn't have a computer, couldn't get anything done.
Right.
So that is one issue, and then And then the question is, now how do we get back, right? So it sounds like that's the next step, right? Exploring the data and saying, what do we have to do to get our kids back on track? So will there be a
Yes.
plan developed to address the areas of deficiency that are noted?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And also, I would take some comfort in the growth that has been seen over last school year, from the performance in the fall to the performance in the spring.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I didn't want to let that languish, because Dr. Bowley and I talked when we were going through the report, and the report does seem to indicate that there is some resiliency of our students, that after the pandemic, they are starting to recover at a pace faster than we anticipated seeing them. And we knew that there was going to be a reduction in proficiency levels, but we are encouraged by what we're seeing. And just to add some context to that, this is in spite of us. We have seen trends in enrollment where students are coming into our district who have had significant gaps in their education, and in some cases have never been in school before. So this is a trend that we're seeing as people migrate to East Brunswick, and other districts are reporting the same thing. So.
Thank you for your great presentation. So on the last page, it says supporting our students. How is this delivered to the parents? How do the parents get an opportunity to partake in, say, summer programs?
Students who are eligible to receive that support, they are contacted directly through our department. Yep. And same for students who are eligible for basic skills instruction.
Do parents get emails, letters?
Yes, both. Yes.
Heather?
Thank you. This is a lot of information to digest. I wanted to just ask you, I want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly. We have 2 tests that are being field tested at this time?
Correct.
Okay, so field testing would mean that they're trying it out to see if it's valid and tests what it says it tests?
To authenticate cut scores, so forth, yes.
Okay, because I'm looking at those results, field testing, even the people that have produced the tests aren't sure that the test is valid, so I don't know how much stock I put in field testing scores. That I do know how much stock I put in field testing scores. I was trying to be diplomatic, Dr. Valesky.
I didn't say it, I just made a very
And
small number.
To just add on to that, I want to say that I truly believe, having had the glorious opportunity of administering standardized testing in the fall of 2021, which was just fantastic when we first went back in person for so many children, I do believe that those tests, at least the ones in the first half of the year, really measured the students' ability to handle the stress of being in large rooms with many other people for the first time. I can't imagine the impact on their results of having to, for the first time, for many of them, sit in crowded rooms for long periods of time, because I don't think there's any way to measure stress, but I think that was a huge factor. I wanted to know, I also wanted to just comment that I appreciate our new math curriculum, because none of these test results reflect the impact of our new curriculum yet, correct?
Correct.
Fantastic. So I'll be curious to see what happens now that we have curriculum that the curriculum committee worked so hard to get, and you worked so hard to bring to us, and see what the impact is. I wondered if it was possible to see any information on the entrance dates or the amount of time that students have spent here that are in these subgroups that still aren't meeting. Because like Dr. Valesky was saying, we've had an influx of students.
Certainly, I can get
And
that
I'm
information.
wondering if these subgroups have spent, or the students that are not graduation ready on many of these things, or that are not at the level that we hope, if they've spent their entire academic career here, if they got here a month before the testing happened, because I'm just curious if these results are reporting our success with the students, or if we're seeing other districts' success with the students.
We're looking at that. I'll be happy to share that with the board.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Barb?
Yeah, similar to what Heather touched upon, one of her points, the Start Strong test, if I understand, this was the first time it was administered at all?
Last fall.
Last year.
Okay, so, and you know, I understand the states need to have some kind of assessment, but the timing, I can speak for, you know, my own child. I could tell you that in the classmates, it does not reflect what they've learned at the high school. They've learned so much more. And the fact that you showed us the jump to the spring is an indication of that. I think in an effort for the state to get numbers, data is important, and I appreciate all the work here. This is very telling and helpful. But, oh, thank you. But the thing is, coming back from a pandemic to sit down for that kind of exam, in addition to what you said about fear of being together, but just knowing the taking a test, right, and having the mechanics of taking a standardized test. I honestly couldn't believe they were doing that. What was it, November? What was it, October, November? I was shocked, to be honest with you, that they even came up with, at least give them a little more time to get their routine together. The schools are just opening, the principals and the administrators, here, go take this test for a million days and go, it just didn't make a lot of sense. So I just hope people, when they look at these numbers and they look at these sets of data, that they take that into account, that it's a new test. You have 2 field tests like we mentioned. To be honest with you, I think it ruins kids' self-confidence in some ways. Now, listen, I'm not saying, that we shouldn't work harder and focus on these areas and make sure everyone reaches equity. But what are you proving if you take, if an international event and then they have the guts to come back to do the work, and then and give them a test that they've never taken before, they don't have preparation for the best that we could do, and they do poorly, how does that help them move ahead? That's just, my 2 cents.
And that's actually, Mrs. Reese, that's the context that almost every agency in the state expressed to the Commissioner of Education about what's the value of this, and you shouldn't do it. And in spite of many agencies writing to that commissioner, she announced that this was her decision, and we were going to continue to administer the strong assessment. So this is driven by the Commissioner of Education, and we're still not quite sure what the value of the data is.
Well, thank you. I mean, maybe they can provide more information. I don't think that's...
We'll have to call one of them at home to find out.
I don't know, but that doesn't sound like starting strong to me at all.
Right.
Thank you.
Mr. Allen.
Dr. Bolis, thank you very much for this beautiful presentation. A lot of information. But if you can send this presentation to us 1 day or 2 days earlier, that will give us plenty of opportunity to digest the numbers. I know you have a lot of tasks, but please, next time, send it out earlier, 1 day or 2.
Mr. Hung, so I actually asked Dr. Bowley not to send it early because there was a lot of information in here, and I did not want anybody to draw a conclusion before they came to the meeting. This is not time sensitive, but I wanted her to be able to present the information to you, give you the information, then allow you to go back and ask your questions based on that presentation. I felt, in this case, that the information ahead of time, that you might, without her guiding the conversation, there might be questions you would ask that we could answer in the presentation right away. So that was my decision for this document. But in so many presentations, we will do that. I've heard from you. We want to get information ahead of you. But in this case, it was my call. It wasn't Dr. Bowley's call. We had originally talked about giving it to you earlier, and I pulled it back because I wanted this presentation to happen first.
Okay, I respect your decision.
For this event.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, so now it's question time.
Yes.
So for the math, so after you guys did a good job, the percentage of students come out from need stronger support to the achieve. So the percentage improvement is about 50%. So what kind of lesson can we learn from this job? And we put that kind of lesson into our teaching, our student math, to avoid them fall into the category need strong support. That's the question I want to ask. So what did you guys do in such a short time, have students make such good improvement, more than, say, Math 4, 57%, and Algebra 1, 62% improvement? What kind of lesson did we learn from this effort? And then we'll put this lesson into our normal teaching. That, I believe, will help our students a lot. And this, you don't need to tell me the answer. I just want you guys think about it. Question number 2, for the dynamic learning maps. So for the English language arts, we have 56 students take the test. For the math, we have 56 students took the test. Why only 21 students took the science test?
Mr. Hong, I believe there's different grade levels tested here, and also that would be a decision made by the IEP team. Perhaps the students were able to take the science SLA,
Okay.
or they were exempt for some reason.
Yes, I think if a student can take math and ELA test, they're likely they can take science too. But that is my question. Thank you. And another question. So I have some concern or deep concern about cheating. The pandemic impact entire East Brunswick. It's not just impact cheating neighborhood. When people choose a property in cheating neighborhood, they don't know what kind of neighbors they are. So I assume East Brunswick for every elementary neighborhood should be the same. So now the cheating number is far below the other elementary school. So it's my opinion we should take a deep look what really caused this difference. So maybe the entire district were using the same curriculum. Suppose our teachers teaching the same thing. And I believe the children from cheating neighborhood should be the same as Lawrenceburg, as Memorial. But now the result shows it's big difference. We should take a deep look what's really happening in that building. Help those teachers to improve and raise our cheatings elementary to the same level as other elementary schools. I don't know how, and you mentioned that now the instructors are not, advisors are not assigned to school, and then maybe you will send more to cheating. But still, we need to take a deep look what really happened and how can we help.
Absolutely, I agree with that.
That's all.
Yes.
I just have a follow-up question to Mr. Hong. Do we still have, are the programs like ELL at the elementary level or some of the specialized special ed programs, are they available in every single elementary building, or are they still housed in just a few?
The specialized programs are in a few. ESL is in every elementary school except Bound.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, for the board, I sent a document to all of you prior to the meeting. There's a document that gives the distribution of all the elementary programming by elementary school.
We have that here? Or
That was emailed to you. So that's, but actually, we took the opportunity to make copies for you tonight.
Nice.
Good job, Janet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's one of the attachments to the document. It's about halfway through.
Are there any other questions for Dr. Bowley? Okay, thank you
Okay,
very
thank you.
much.
Good job.
No
Thank you,
Megan
Joyce.
tonight, I guess? No Megan?
No, Megan.
Okay, so we're skipping ahead. I'm sorry that Megan is not here, especially because you've all seen, have you already talked about this?
No, we didn't, but Dr. Vanella is here. Maybe Dr. Vanella can offer a few comments about,
About Miss
students.
Megan. I'm sad that she's not
about the,
here. You've got
yeah.
two students, but one of them is also our student. Do you want to come up and say a few words? Would you like to? On Megan's behalf?
Yeah, I was going to have Megan brag about herself.
I know, I'm so excited for her.
I'll do my best. Maybe I could do it for a couple more minutes and she'll show up. So this was a great honor. We actually met with the two students today. They actually went on one visit to this, and she actually had the opportunity to meet Representative Zawicki, and he's actually works at Princeton, and they met at Rutgers University, got to be able to take a tour through the labs, and they're actually getting the opportunity to meet and talk about STEM in government, in economics, so they're looking at STEM through different lenses. And it's a great opportunity for two students from EBHS to be able to make it there. Testament to our Dr. Boley and what she's doing with our programs, our science program, Mr. Higgins, Ms. DiBenedetti, and it's just a testament to the great kids we have, but just phenomenal experience and connections that they're able to make. Talking to Megan today, too, she did apply to Princeton, and networking with Mr. Zawicki is going to be a good thing.
That's terrific.
So,
Good.
And you're being modest because this is also a testament to you and your staff.
yeah, the teachers are doing one heck of a job. They really are. We're proud of them. Thank you.
You get the accolades. You have to take the lumps, you got to take the accolades as well.
Thank you.
Right?
Thanks, Dr. Vanilla.
Thank you. Okay, so we have, the wrong one. The public hearing on the superintendent's amended employment contract. Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak to this issue and this issue only? Okay. Seeing none, I'm going to close that public hearing, which will bring us to the good of the cause for the public. I have to read the small print, because you're making the print smaller, and my eyes are getting
is
older.
smaller this week.
Right? Did everyone notice that? Print smaller, eyes
It's
older.
the same.
It's not the same. The Board of Education
Impulses to do this, too.
recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on school matters of community interest. To protect the privacy of all students and staff, concerns regarding individual students and staff members should generally be addressed by first meeting with the appropriate administrative staff. In order to permit the fair and orderly expression of such comment, the board shall provide a period for public comment at each and every meeting. I remind the public, this is your time to speak to us. We will not be answering you, but if you need to leave information with the two lovely ladies in front, you are welcome to do so. And the limit on the time is going to be 3 minutes. Is there anyone out there wishing to speak to the board this evening? Mr. Spillman, come up to the podium and please state, I know your name and address for the record. I know you're a veteran.
I'm honored, Madam President. Alex Spielman, 6 Douglas Road. I just have a simple question. It might be complicated. I'm not too sure exactly. I was looking at the financial section when they were talking about non-public resources, and they were doing something with St. Bart's, and they were talking about the Dell Chromebooks and the Google educational software. I was just wondering, I'm assuming that we are using something similar with that within our schools with the Chromebooks in certain grades. And my question was, is the board aware if there is COPA compliance within that suite? Since I know Google has had issues when it came to dealing with that. COPA has to do with dealing with metadata with children under the age of 13 as a member of safety and security. I'm not too sure exactly if that would be even able to be understood or even measured. But I'm just wondering, because now Google is a private company and, they're going to make a way to make a profit one way or another. I just want to make sure our children are not exploited in that aspect because we're using Google Chrome and anything that has to do with their particular hardware. That's all.
If the board so desires, we could probably answer this question tonight.
Sure.
Is that pleasure of the board?
Absolutely.
Mr. LaTronica, would you mind?
Yeah, so within the Google Suite, we definitely do take measures to make sure the COPA compliances adhere to. We primarily use Microsoft, we use Google for certain things, but the services that we use within Google, we have kids tagged by age, so only certain services are allowed for kids 13 and under.
Okay, thank you. No, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Spillman. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak to the board this evening? Dr. Councilwoman Zimvicki.
Thank you. Dana Zambicki, proud president of the East Brunswick Education Association. I'm inspired to speak tonight after Dr. Boley's presentation. Just COVID obviously had horrible impacts on our students, but the bounce back has been amazing, right? The bounce back has been completely amazing. And the NJA, our parent organization, is one of those agencies that would love to get rid of this testing that we are doing that is a waste of time. And we will be working, and I will be working very hard to make sure that that happens. But, you know, there's so many great assessments that have been going on, alternative assessments, giving the teachers the autonomy to do what they feel is best for the students. That's what's so important. And I just wanted to share some of the great things that are actually going on right now in the schools. We have discovered, the students are discovering the life cycle of pumpkins and following through with a whole series of projects with that. At Churchill, they are doing a PBSIS fundraiser for Wreaths for America, which is something that is so passionate with so many of our staff members and teachers, and they're learning about the biology of how e-cigarettes impact the body. Our drivers at the SOF building have been teaching the students how to safely evacuate buses in case there's an emergency. In one of our other elementary buildings, our first graders are building parachutes, and they are evaluating the effect of wind on the parachutes. At Hammarskjöld, they're dissecting owl pellets right now in science. There's a family-wide sponsored event by the EBA at Central School that's focusing on cracking the code, which is decoding and literacy. In Lawrence Brook, the Lawrence Brook Allies have been recently launched, and one of the things that the fourth graders have been trained to become allies in the building. In another fourth grade classroom, they've been observing frogs and millipedes and crabs, and at the high school, they've been doing their door decorating for school spirit. The Anderson Bowl is coming up on November 17th, and the drama club production of Puff is coming up on November 18th, 19th, and 20th. Learning is alive, it's active, and it's continuous in our schools. And I am extremely proud of the teachers and support staff that I represent. I am also proud of the administration that helps direct us and the central administration, and I think it's an appropriate comment to make as we enter American Education Week. So thank you very much, and thank you to all of the board members for your service in promoting our public schools. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Zambicki. Is there anyone wishing to speak to the board this evening? Okay, seeing none, we're going to close the public portion, which brings us to our Board of Education items. Before I ask for a motion to move tonight's agenda, is there anything that needs separating out? Okay, well then may I please have a motion, Mr. Carangelo, Mrs. Becker. Is there any discussion on anything on this evening's agenda? Mrs. Chu.
Question on, what section is this in? Oh, sorry. Financial services number 9, the comprehensive maintenance plan. So I was looking at the increase in 22, 23, 24, and there was like a 20% increase from 21 to 22, and then just a 2%. Is that reflective of something specific like inflationary effects, or, you know, the increase in the actual versus the budget between those 2 years?
Mr. Giuliano?
I see Joe making his way.
I'm going to defer that to Mr. Crotchfeld.
I had a feeling when I watched him walk his
He's got the report
way.
in front of him faster than I do, so.
Mr.
So,
Crotchfeld.
the thing to note on that report, the 22 year is the actual, what was spent. 23 is the budget, and 24 is a projection.
Right.
So there's not a direct correlation of, okay, in 22, you won't see a big jump, or you might see a big decrease to 23. Depending on what was approved in the budget, there could have been a budget request that impacts the maintenance. We also have an increase because of the TCUs. They're required cleaning and maintenance of that additional structure that, was not there in 22. And then the 24 year, we're just starting to develop that budget, you know. So that's just a true projection.
Just a 2%
Yeah, 2%
inflationary,
increase.
Which is depending on what inflation is gonna be, then who
Right.
knows, right?
Right.
But, yeah, it just seemed like between the 22 actual to the 23 budget, it just seemed like a large increase, and it was across the board, not just
Right.
one facility. So I don't know if that's just a budgeting practice to make sure there's enough money there, or if it was an expectation that inflation was gonna have a significant impact. That's
No,
kind of-
that's based on the budget that was developed before the inflation times that we are currently in. So remember, that budget was approved back in May, before, things are what they are now. Okay?
Mrs. Reese?
Yeah, I have a question on the student services. They had the Churchill Club activity team to canceling the video newsmakers clubs for the art club. And it doesn't have to be today, but maybe we could look at, we have a wide variety of clubs here, so I would love for the public to see how many clubs we do have, and just to understand the process, how some are brought in, some are taken out, and how new clubs are approved, so folks are aware of the.
Yeah, we'll be happy to do that. Dr. Figueroa actually keeps a running history of our clubs, and we'll update that. But Dr. Figueroa can speak to the actual club formation and modification of clubs, so.
We have all of our clubs listed on the website, so that's good for someone who might be interested in partaking in one of our clubs. This particular club, what happens is we look at the projections from 1 year, and then we make those, the principals really are key to that, make the decisions on what clubs may be best for the students for the following year. Sometimes students change their mind, or they go into something else, and they want to see a different type of club. So in this particular case, the video newsmakers did not have anyone who was really interested. We had about 20 people that were interested in the arts club. So we figured instead of holding a club with no students in it and not running it really, we had actual students that were interested in a club that had already been a club before. So we figured instead of waiting for a whole year when we could actually open it now, that's what we wanted to do. That's what we asked for the board's approval on this.
And I think it's,
You've given us-
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think you've given us, don't you give us, I don't know if it's annually, the list of clubs? I remember seeing, have you seen those, right, Barb?
Yeah, we can update that, but
Yeah.
I do want to compliment Dr. Figueroa, all the principals, because student voice is now considered in all of our clubs. And so we are generating clubs that students are actually interested in. It ebbs and flows. I know Dr. Vanella has entertained requests from some students about new and different types of things. Every principal has done the same. And that's been ongoing. That's been really active for more than 6 years, and probably close to 7 years, that we're incorporating a large student voice in what happens.
That's great.
That's good, thank you.
Yes. Any other questions? Okay. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Mrs. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Colangelo?
Yes.
Mrs. Chu?
Yes, except abstain from Board of Education, item 1.
Noted. Mr. Sismar?
Yes.
Ms. Guas?
Yes.
Mr. Hong?
Yes.
Mrs. Reese?
Yes.
Mr. Winston?
Yes.
And President Lax.
Yes, motion carries. I do realize I forgot to ask about go to the cause. Can I still do that before I adjourn?
For the board? Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Any committee items, new or old business? Mr. Winston?
Yeah, committee, I attended the Community Programs Committee meeting on the 19th of October. Unfortunately, we didn't have a quorum, so Emery Gilbert went freestyle. And I'll tell you, she shared some things. My handwriting she spoke so quickly, and there were so many great things that I'm going to try to pick out what I could read, and because it was that good. Pretty much so across the board, enrollments are ahead of pace, far above estimation. So when we talk about, are we back? We're back. There 680 enrollments in the morning and aftercare. But just a couple of quick highlights. This after-school enrichment that, if you all recall, Emory started, it was sort of a pipe dream. We're going to do a few things. They're going to do a few things. Volleyball, junior master chef, 104 enrollees. I was like, count me in. I'll eat what they make. I'm good. They are teaching elementary schools chess, hiring high school kids to get in the trenches with the younger kids, which I think has the same value as when Megan addresses students that are in this room. I'll tell you what, that, Anne Marie should be so proud. There's trips to Dave & Buster's for K through 7. No, Lori, K through 7. You can't go, so I saw you light up.
I know.
But it's just awesome. So I actually invited her to get on our agenda, and I think she'll be reaching out. You got to hear this. I mean, I didn't even do it justice. She is amazing. The folks that work with her are awesome. The programming, they didn't have that when I was young. You know, I don't think we had any of this. I think we had to stand outside until they opened the door. So, I mean, there's just so much fun going on in the schools, and all of it has educational value. So hats off to community programs. And Emery, Ms. Gilbert, if you're listening right now, thank you.
We're going to share with her if she doesn't hear it, because she is very innovative. And Mr. Crotchfeld, thanks to you, because we through their efforts, we really have our enterprise fund through community programs is back just as it will, probably even stronger than pre-pandemic, right, Joe? Almost. Not yet. But it's rapidly accelerating.
Is the facility rentals coming back to life too?
Mr. Crotchfeld?
Absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, it's really encouraging. And then, other than good of the cause stuff, I know we rarely highlight teachers that have passed, but I would be remiss if I didn't just highlight Mr. Steve Michaud passing. He made an impact on students early on in the East Brunswick history. Nobody stood on his desk better than that man and screamed out, "Call me Ishmael." So, Steve Michaud, rest your soul. I know you changed a lot of people's lives, and the things I read online were really something. He was just a great guy, and yet another product of great educators here in East Brunswick.
And for those of you not East Brunswick High School graduates, he was a humanities teacher.
Yes.
The greatest humanities teacher.
Yeah.
We did have 3, but he was one of a kind. So yes, Jeff, I share your sentiments on his passing. It was
Great guy.
serious loss. Yes, Mrs. Becker?
One of the things we approved tonight was an overnight field trip for the Model UN team from the high school. And I like to always give a shout out to these kids. The tremendous amount of work that goes into even just, use the word audition, for lack of a better word, getting onto the team. The kids have to prepare all this information. And then the tremendous amount of work they spend, the experience they have. To me, this is what I want to see and like to see our kids doing. The experience when they actually get to go to the New York Model UN and sit in the seats of the UN delegates. There's nothing like it. It's one of the things that when we do surveys amongst classes that have graduated, comes back to us as a treasured memory, but it's not just something to put on your college transcript. They get so much out of it, and they have to spend so much work. Also, Jeff, thank you for bringing to our attention all the activities you just mentioned. And also, Dana, thank you for bringing to our attention. I love hearing about the variety of things that the kids are doing. Again, this is what we want them to spend their time. I have to say, I was a little concerned about the first graders parachuting, but I'm assuming it's very carefully monitored and they're parachuting from low areas, not
Find out.
It's okay.
free flowing out of planes, Dr. V. I'm not quite sure.
It's a skill you can utilize later on in life.
This is true. This is true.
And I have great faith in our students that their parachutes will work.
I think you should try them. You should pilot it,
Aye.
Dr. Lutz. Yeah, but seriously, thank you. This is what we want to see the kids spend their time on. We want to see them taking what they're learning and apply it, whether it's critical thinking or practical arts or just enjoying the process of learning. I know that the state would not be happy with me for using that phrase, but I think that that's what it's all about, and everything that we hear at these meetings reflects that. And we do have an amazing staff district-wide, and amazing kids and parents, pretty good Board of Ed and central office staff, but it's just the kids getting the opportunity to do all this stuff. That's what it's about. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Sismark.
First graders.
I'm going to echo what everybody else said here. The Start Strong testing, East Brunswick's motto should be, we remain strong and getting stronger every day. From the students, staff, everything we've heard tonight. I mean, you know, that's, maybe it could be our new motto, our new bear on the field. You know, we remain strong and we're getting stronger every day. We're back. So go Bears. Have a good night.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to actually, a few of us were at the President's Own Marine Band. I don't know how many of you out there saw it. We had a packed crowd. One of the things when Maureen asked me about, what I loved was that multi-generational. So we had our students, we had our staff, we had parents, grandparents. If anyone hasn't seen it before, they come every so many years.
5 years.
Every 5 years. So I've been to a few, and I've tremendously enjoyed it. It's patriotic, it's exciting, and if you didn't get to see it, then I would suggest you go in 5 years, because...
I was just going to add, I appreciated that they took the time to recognize people in the audience who had served, including our own. And I really liked seeing that they stayed the next day, or they were here the next day working with the students, that it wasn't just a phenomenal performance, but that there was the educational component that involved the students after. It was just such a great opportunity and a really good night.
It is. And I get chills every time they do that, because they play each branch's song, and then the people in the audience stand up, and it's pretty special. Yeah.
And if you don't mind, my takeaway from that was, this is an organization that is refined in such precision in everything they do. And yet during the breaks, here they were, they were down, basically, you know, kneeling down, greeting students who were coming up to the stage and having a conversation with them so they could be face to face. And these kids were so inspired by what they were seeing. So I wish I'd been privy to some of the conversations, but they were engaging and professional, and we welcome them back sooner than 5 years if they want to come.
Oh, I would love that.
Yeah.
And they said, what, do they play at every inauguration since?
Yeah, every presidential inauguration since 18.
Jefferson?
Yeah.
Jefferson.
Yeah.
It's pretty, yeah.
They're actually, yeah, they're really,
You'd be surprised.
they're still really young. That's the funny part about it. Yeah.
You would great, Jeff, 5 years from now, mark your calendar, I promise.
I'm so old. Let's
You'll
not
be-
do that. Just
yeah.
remind me.
We'll remind you. Okay. Well, then, whereas the Board of Education must discuss matters which are not appropriate for discussion in a public meeting, and whereas these subjects are within the exception to the Open Public Meeting Act and are permitted to be discussed in closed session, the Board of Education intends to discuss those items listed on tonight's agenda. Length of a closed session is estimated to be 2 hours, after which the public meeting of the board shall reconvene and action may be taken now. Okay. Well, Vicki and Jeff, I'm going to go with, okay. Any discussion on that?
No.
No? Then all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you for everyone that came out. Have a wonderful evening.